The US just joined Japan to prop up the yen, first time in nearly 30 years, and the XRP price closed green, $1.08 today, up nearly 2%. So 2,500 XRP sits at about $2,700. Markets now price a record 60% chance Kevin Warsh first Fed move is a hike. By the close, I'll show you what $2,700 becomes if the XRP price ever prints $10. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want more XRP news. Let's roll the first tape.
Fall against the US dollar. A photograph taken during a Trump administration cabinet meeting showed a notepad belonging to US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Under a heading marked "To Do," the note appeared to read "Buy Japanese yen, $5 to $10 bill." The photograph was taken at 11:33 a.m. Eastern Time on July 31 during an on-the-record portion of the meeting at Camp David. The note has raised speculation that the U.S. Treasury was considering intervention to strengthen the Japanese currency. Earlier that same day, Reuters reported that the U.S. Treasury had informed several banks it could intervene in the yen market. The report came around 2 hours before the photograph was taken. However, the Treasury has not confirmed whether any intervention took place.
So we just saw a handwritten note and nothing says confirmed. Hold on, because the confirmation exists and it's bigger than just the note. The Financial Times reported the intervention actually happened, and economist Mohammed El-Arid actually put the Financial Times' own words on your screen right here. This is your own XRP news today, because what just broke out is the old way money moves between countries, and XRP was built as a replacement for that. The proof is on your screen right here. The US Treasury intervened in yen exchange rates on Friday, marking the first time Tokyo and Washington joined forces to support the Japanese currency via outright purchases in nearly 30 years. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York undertook the unusual move of conducting a sale of euros to buy yen on behalf of the Treasury. So the New York Fed sold euros to buy yen on the Treasury's behalf. It calls the first time Tokyo and Washington joined forces on the yen in nearly 30 years. If you say that plainly, Washington and Tokyo had to manually drag money across borders just to hold a currency up. That is the exact job the XRP ledger was designed to do. It moves value between countries in seconds with no rescue squad and no phone call. I promised you, the banks watching that rescue understood it too. And the market already thinks it knows what comes next. Look at what it now believes the new Fed chair does. Breaking, the market now sees a record 60% chance of a 25% basis point Fed hike in September. In other words, the market now believes Kevin Warsh's first policy move as Fed chair will be a high rate. And we can see the overall betting odds actually increasing at 60% for a 25 basis point increase, and no change sitting at around 39%. So about a coin flip between both opportunities. But that is a record 60% chance the first thing Kevin Warsh ever does as the Fed chair, not cut, raise. And in the same frame, the US is borrowing rates at their highest since June 2007, with mortgage rates that could near 8%. I want you to notice who gets hurt by that, because it is not the person holding 2,500 XRP with no loan against it. It's the person holding debt. Expensive money punishes borrowers, and XRP holders are not borrowers. That is the whole design of holding the asset outright. And in Washington, the finger pointing over the squeeze has already started. Have a listen. Breaking. Mortgage rates jumped to the highest level in more than a year thanks to Donald Trump's war with Iran. Trump doesn't care if you can afford to buy a home. Elizabeth Warren says mortgage rates just hit their highest levels in more than a year, and she blames Trump's war with Iran. The claim is hers, and I'm not settling it. I'm pointing at it. The cost of money has Washington blaming Washington, while the XRP price sat green through this whole argument. Quick question while that sinks in. Is Kevin Warsh's first move a hike or a hold? Drop your answer in the comments. Don't forget to tap the like, subscribe, and notification bell while you're down there. Now, the machine underneath all of this called the carry trade. And before you hear an analyst explain it, one post gave me history with numbers you won't forget. Every asset you own was partially financed in Tokyo. That funding is being withdrawn. For 30 years, Japan lent the world money for free. Zero rates, yield curve control, a currency engineered to sink. So capital did the obvious thing: borrow yen at nothing, sell it, buy treasuries, NASDAQ, emerging market debt, Mexican pesos, credit, anything with a yield, add leverage, repeat until the trade became invisible, until it was simply the water global markets swam in. He continues to say August 2024 was the reversal. The Bank of Japan raised rates 15 basis points. The Nikkei fell 12% in a day, the worst since 1987, and the VIX printed in the 60s. 15 basis points. That policy rate is now 1%, the highest since 1995. Japan nearly holds $1.2 trillion of treasuries as the largest foreign owner and sold nearly $30 billion in the first quarter alone. Everyone will watch the equity sell-off. The equity sell-off is survivable, but Japan built this trap over 30 years and it's now walking it in public. US public held debt is at 99% of GDP, the highest since 1946, with net interest headed from roughly 1 trillion to 2.1 trillion by 2036, while the primary deficit actually sinks. The entire deterioration is interest compounding on itself. And you heard it from him directly, 15 basis points. That's all it took back in August of 2024 to drop the Nikkei 12% in a day and put the fear gauge in the 60s. XRP lived through that day too, and the holders who did nothing came out on the other side. The pain never lands on people who own their assets outright. It lands on people who borrowed to be there. Borrow yen at nothing, buy everything else, and you pray the yen stays weak. Nobody can margin call a holder. There is no exit door the tribe can be forced through, and no bank in Tokyo gets a vote on your bag. And before I close, the freshest card on my desk shows what Japan is selling to defend itself, because that part touches America directly. Here it says the US Treasuries bought Japanese yen on Friday for the first time since 2011, but it didn't sell dollars to do it. The New York Fed sold euros and bought yen on behalf of the Treasury through Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, according to the Financial Times. A photographer caught Treasury Secretary Bessent's notepad at Camp David cabinet meeting. It read, "To do, buy Japanese yen 5 to 10 billion. Japan spent over 58 billion in a single day to defend its currency." And here this chart displays what will happen. So first we have the yen falls to 40-year lows. Then Japan sells US Treasury bonds. US yields rise, so 30-year hits 5.23%, and then your mortgage and loans go up. And then it continues because the US buys yen to slow this cycle, the first time since 2011. $58 billion spent in a single day, the largest currency defense in Japan's history, and the cost lands in America's own bond market with 30-year yields at 5.23%, its highest since 2007. The Post even says that Japan and the US may announce a joint currency policy as early as next week, so put the whole fight night together. The old rails needed two governments, a handwritten note, and $58 billion in one day to hold a currency still. Nobody stepped in to rescue XRP. No emergency meeting, no phone calls to banks, no notepad, and the XRP price finished the day green. That is what a neutral bridge asset looks like in a week when the bridges run by governments needed repairs. Now, the number I promised you, 2,500 XRP, costing $2,700 tonight. The price ever prints, $10. That will be over $25,000. Nobody had to lend you a yen to get there. This is analysis, not advice, and is exactly why I'm not selling a machine that runs without the rescue squad. The XRP holders did not need Camp David. The crowd did. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.